G. Yin and Yu, Part 1. Every night for weeks, Yin's little brother Yu had gotten worse. His mysterious illness had started as a sore throat, but lately the coughs were loud and painful sounding. Enough so that Yin couldn't sleep, afraid for her brother. A pied starling sat atop his perch in their modest home, a 3-bedroom house made of bamboo, clay bricks, and paper. The bird was her spirit animal, Lune, summoned a summer ago. Yin had been the only girl in her village to call a spirit animal in over 2 years. Lune was too selfish to be afraid for Yu, but he was kept awake all the same. Every time Yin turned in her bed, the bird would feel the vibrations and fly up from his perch, startled. Then he would fluff out his feathers and let out a terrible sound, like a squeaky wagon wheel. "I'm sorry, Luna," Yin said to the bird, losing her patience. "I can't help it." Yin hated Luna as much as she loved him. Starlings were possibly her least favorite bird. Why couldn't she be bonded to a golden pheasant, or a raven, or even a common weaver, something she could train? Instead, she had Lua, who only knew how to complain. The bird let out another terrible sound. This time it was because Tara was hobbling up into the room. Something between a bear and a weasel, Tana was an ancient-looking bigatro, a nocturnal animal that crawled around their house at night looking for mice or bugs to eat. Tana wasn't officially a spirit animal, but he might as well have been. Yin's father had raised Tana since he was a cub, long before Yin and Yu were born. Yin or Yu was born. Luna puffed up his black and white feathers, but Tana basically looked up with his cloudy brown eyes. He was on the hunt for something, sniffing the floor. When the bird crow slunk into her brother's room, Yin got out of bed. If she wasn't allowed in the room, then surely Tara wasn't either. She reached to pick up the beast just as it was about to sneak under Yu's bed. She carried Tara back out the doorway and was about to close the door when she heard her brother call her name. "Did I wake you?" Yin asked, but Yu shook his head no. "I can't sleep," he said weakly. The boy was 5 years old, much younger than Yin, and always looked up to his big sister. "Will you tell me a story?" "I only know the ones about the storm," she said, "and you've already heard it." Once, when her brother was little, there was a rainstorm that tore through their village. All night the wind raced up the mountain they lived on and pulled at their house, so it sounded like the roof was being ripped away little by little. Yu was scared, and so Yin made up a story about a storm to make him feel better. Please, Yu begged her. I'm scared. There was a storm, Yin began, and it came and went, and everyone was okay. She said goodnight to her brother. No, Yu said. Really tell it. Okay, you brat, she said, smiling at the boy with sleepy eyes. She put Tyrion down, and the animal scampered away. Where should I begin? She asked him. Start in the forest, Yu said, and Yin nodded. But before she could begin the story, Yu started to cough. At first it was gentle, but soon he was coughing so hard that Yin held a rag to his mouth to stifle the sound. When he had finally finished, a little bit of blood came away with the rag. Yin screamed when she saw it, and her father and mother came in, rushing into the room. They hurried to Yu's bedside and saw the blood too. Yin's mother picked the boy up in her arms and held him tight to her chest. What are you doing in here? Yin's father asked. Do you want to get sick too? He pulled Yin out of the room. I want to help, she cried. You can't, he said. Hearing that felt the scariest of all. When her mother came from Yu's room, the family agreed it was time to bring the boy to the village healer. It was a warm night, and the healer's home was only a short journey down the mountain. If they left now, they could reach the healer by sunrise. I'm coming too, Yin insisted, but her father hesitated. Finally, he agreed. There wasn't time to argue. All together, they traveled through the dark, carrying Yu in a wooden cart. Lune slept in a nest at Yu's side, where Yin would have been if she were allowed in the cart. The road was bumpy, but by sunrise they were knocking on the healer's door. Who's there? Asked a woman with a blue sash. Her white hair whipped into the breeze when she opened the door. Immediately she saw the sick boy. Nothing you sold us has worked, Yin's father said. He's getting worse every night. The woman looked sad. She stared at the boy with a furrowed brow, then sighed deeply as she looked up at Yin's parents. Yin studied the woman's face for a sign that her brother would be okay, but all she found there was sorrow. No cure is certain. I hope you don't blame the medicine. We don't, Yin's mother said. But we don't have much money left either. The healer waved for Yin's family to enter, all except for Lura. No animals, I'm afraid, the woman said. I'm sorry. Luna puffed up defiantly, but before Yin had to ask, the starling blazed onto her skin just above the girl's wrist. Thank you, the woman whispered. With a wink, she lifted her robes to show Yin her own mark. Her spirit animal was a red panda, which slept at her ankle. You can call me Kira, the woman told the girl, and her name is Tezu. She pointed to the tattoo. Can I offer anyone some tea? Kira said, ushering Yin inside. Tea, Yin's father repeated, sounding furious. We have walked all night to come here. Can you help us heal my son or not? Yin had never seen him so scared. Kira looked at Yin, then back at her parents. There is still hope to be had for your son, Kira said. I suggest that we discuss your options in my meditation chamber. Yin's parents stood to follow the woman, and so did Yin. Why don't you sit with your brother, dear? Kira said, turning back to the girl. I'm sure he'd like to be with his brave big sister right now. Yin looked at her mother and father, who nodded solemnly. But Yin didn't feel brave. She knew what the healer was doing. She was leaving Yin out of the conversation, denying her the truth. She wanted to help Yu as badly as they did. Why wouldn't they let her listen? 3 adults passed behind a green curtain, speaking in hushed tones that Yin couldn't make out. After they were gone, Yin stood by the cart, watching her brother sleep. He looked frail and thin compared to the boy she knew. She wanted him to wake up, but Yin knew better. She began to stare at her own tattoo, wondering if Lura felt as alone as she did, or as helpless. The girl looked around to make sure no one was looking, and then she whispered across her skin and summoned Lura. Suddenly the starling leapt from her arm and into the air. Yin didn't care that she was breaking Kira's rule. She needed to know if her brother would be okay. Sometimes, playing with Luna, Yin believed she could hear more acutely. She hoped that with his help she could listen from behind the curtain. Luna took a moment to settle, nestling comfortably on her shoulder. Once he did, Yin spoke in a whisper. I need to hear what the healer is saying. Do you think you can help? Luna trilled contortedly in the girl's ear. Yin closed her eyes tightly, trying her best to block out all other thoughts. Fear kept surfacing, though. Yin could feel her hand shaking at her side. She pressed her palms together hard to still them, soon found her center. Suddenly, Yin heard what she thought was a loud wind outside, like a storm was coming. But when she opened her eyes, she saw it was nothing more than a breeze. She knew that it was working. She was drawing on Luna's abilities, but she needed to focus. Yin closed her eyes again, breathing steadily. Soon she could hear even the quietest sound in the room. A mosquito landed on a teacup, and to Yin it sounded like a load of fireworks set on a table. As she opened her eyes, Yin realized she was able to hear Kira's voice from the other room, almost as if she was sitting right beside her. There are no guarantees, the healer said, her voice graved. Even at that price? Yin could hear the outrage in her mother's voice. It's an expensive cure, but a powerful one. It's the best I have access to, even at my age, the old woman explained. And it's our only option? Of course not, she told him. There are other healers, some more powerful than I am. But there's no time, Yin's mother said. The next closest healer is a 6-day journey through the mountains. Isn't that what you told us when we first came to you? That isn't exactly true, the woman said. What is this? Yin's father said angrily again. Yin could hear the trembling in his voice. It's true, the closest professional healer is quite far away, she said, the closest practicing human healer. But legend has it that the Healthbringer lives in the great bamboo maze that protects us to the south. Her name is Ji, and she has powers far greater than mine. Why would you wait to tell us this? Yin's father said. Because Ji is beyond our reach, the woman replied. No one has seen the great panda, for at least 12 years. And it's a fool's errand navigating the great bamboo maze. I wouldn't want to put more of your family in danger. Yin knew the maze Kira spoke of. One of the entrances was only a mile south of their home. Her parents had warned her many times to stay away from it. It was rumored to be haunted, though Yin didn't believe that. She did believe, however, that a strong man and woman had died inside from starvation or thirst, their bodies eaten by rats and worms, or by the maze itself. Yin's father kept a map of the maze tucked away in their home. Once, their family had been privy to such important secrets, though Yin doubted the Zonganese military would allow them to keep it now if they knew. Tell us more about the Healthbringer, Yin's mother asked Kira. Yin listened the best she could, but out of the corner of her eye she saw a flash of red that broke her concentration. She looked up. The curtain swayed lazily as if something had just passed through it. A small creature leapt onto the shelf behind her, then onto the wagon. It was Kira's red panda, Tazu. The animal's striped tail moved like a cat's, brushing Yu's leg and arm as she walked. Tazu yawned wide, then curled into a ball at the boy's head and went to sleep. Do something, Yin said to the animal. If Kira was a healer, maybe her spirit animal was too. Heal my brother, please. Teza opened her shiny black eyes to look at Yin. She quickly closed it again and continued to sleep. Yin wanted to scream. Instead, Luna flew up into the air, making his terrible squeaky wheel sound as if to speak for the girl. Yin's father burst from behind the curtain, startling both Yin and Tazu. Luna continued to fly around the room in panic, so that Yin's father had to duck and dodge the bird. "Why can't you behave yourself?" Yin's father yelled. Kira walked over to the door and held it open until Luna flew outside. The healer woke Yu. He tried to sit up, but he couldn't. His eyes were crusted and red. Kira put her hand on the boy's chest as he started to cough. He clenched his jaw between coughs, as if the pain was unbearable. Yu laid back down with a moan, his wet hair sticking to his forehead. "You have decided, then?" the healer asked Yin's parents. They both nodded, with sorrow in their eyes.